setting up this talk, I do a lot of coaching of VPs of product and heads of product. I occasionally step into companies as the interim or temporary head of product when a company's forgotten to have one. And I end up doing a fair amount of sort of career counseling with mid-level individual contributors and early folks in the product leadership space. So wanted to put together some thoughts on how we might think about individual contributor product managers moving up into the leadership or the management track, what it means, whether it's a good choice, a little bit of background on that. So here's our agenda for the brief talk. I'll try to narrowly define what I think a product leader is so we can know what we're talking about and what those folks do. A big question here, and I think it's maybe the most important one, is should somebody want that? And I take no position on that. I think what's important is understanding what we might be getting ourselves into and then making good personal choices for that. And then if somebody out here is interested in that move from product manager to product leader, what are good ways you can raise your hands, signal interest, get that process started? Okay, let's dive in. So product leader, here's a picture of somebody. I don't know, I think she's a product leader, although I can't tell from here. Qualifications for me, the first one should be obvious, which is I'm going to use the phrase product leader here to mean somebody who manages product managers. Obvious, not obvious. People inflate the terms as they choose, different titles in different places. Sometimes that head of product or product leader has design folks working for them. I'm going to separate out, though, some of the other titles so that we, again, be sort of narrowly focused. Your company is going to have its own set of HR guidelines and stack of titles. So group product manager, director of products, VP, chief product officer. Notice they all seem to have the word product in them. That's a good giveaway. And what I'd like to set aside and not talk about here are folks who have some product people working for them, but they're primarily running engineering organizations. So if you're a CIO, if you're a CTO, if you're a VP of engineering with 85 development folks and 3 product managers, I'm going to put you on the engineering side of the house or the development side of the house, just so we're clear on what we're talking about. And then let's break this out a little bit. I've got really 4 things I think product leaders need to do. You may have your own list, so we'll start with mine. And I think what we'll see is that that set of activities really starts to prohibit or reduce the time for product leaders to do what's traditionally been the product management work for the folks who work for them, for their direct reports. So let's put up a quick list here in no particular order. The first one I think for me is if you're a product leader, particularly if you parachute into a company as the interim or temporary head of product, as I sometimes do, or you've just been promoted into your first product leader role, I think it's really important that you have a plan, that you figure out what your department should look like, rather than inheriting an org chart or a set of folks or somebody else's philosophy on this. You're going to have to design and build a team. You're going to have to nurture that team. And it would be great if you've got some theory, some models for how to do that. Second thing, having done that, of course, you're going to have to be driving product strategy. Once you've got product strategy, I think you need to focus on some overall processes. Once you've got processes in mind, moving on to some tooling. I run into a lot of folks who think that the tools define product management. So if I'm writing JIRA tickets, I must be a product person, right? Not so much. The activities that we do, going to meetings, sitting in on customer calls, doing retrospectives, aren't by themselves going to add value, and they are the sort of really basic, low-level activities on which we're going to build strategy and processes. So top down, are we trying to accomplish the right things? Third one, really, really important. We all know that product managers have tremendous amounts of responsibility and 0 or next to 0 actual authority to get anybody to do anything. So if you're the product leader, if you're in charge of your product management organization, you're going to need to spend an awful lot of time working with your peers to make sure stuff gets done and that everybody's happily coming along. Claire's talk earlier on working with marketing, I think, is a great example of how we need to think about our various peers and stakeholders to get things done rather than I'm the boss of you. Worth a quick side note here. Nobody on my teams ever uses this phrase more than once, I am the CEO of my product, right? Usually take them for a walk around the parking lot for a while and explain that if they were really the CEO, they could hire and fire the development team, which they never can do, right? And then last thing is working with the C-level executives. Sometimes the product leader is actually at the big kids table with the other C-level folks. Sometimes they're an influencer, they're one level down. If we as product leaders are not figuring out how to keep our CEOs, COOs, VPs of sales on track and on strategy, then nobody on our product management team is going to be able to succeed, right? So we've got to be doing that work. You can call it whatever you like. If you don't like it, you can call it politics. If you do like it, you can call it organizational theory. All of those, though, are in support of something. You know, what's the bigger theory here? Which is, I believe the number one thing that product leaders have to get up every day in the morning to do is to think about how they're going to create conditions for their product managers to succeed, by implication for those products to succeed and the company to succeed. So we as product leaders aren't there to take credit for things. We're not there to push all the details of somebody's product strategy around. We're there to understand what works and doesn't work within our organizations, within our companies, within our markets, spot the problems that need to be fixed in that scope in the same way that our product managers identify problems and issues with customers and jobs to be done and journeys. We're going to be identifying things and fixing them within our organizations so our product managers can succeed. Backing up a step, the most frequent reason people call me is either their head of product walked out the door and nobody knows why, or maybe the whole product team walked out the door and nobody seems to know why. So these are all about setting up the conditions so that we can actually do our jobs. Okay, I'm going to tear into these. I'm going to spend more time on item 1 just because I felt like it, but we'll go through the list. Okay, so designing, nurturing a product team. I think you need a really strong plan and a view for what you've got to do. The first most important thing maybe is, how many product managers do I need? Right? And one answer is, this is how many HR told me I could hire, or this is how many the CTO or the CFO approved, right? Not so smart. I usually look for some metric like counting up all the number of the folks I would call makers, developers, designers, DevOps folks, tech writers, test automation people, all the people who actually do work to create product. And I see that if there's more than about 10 of those for every product manager, I know my product managers are failing. It doesn't matter how good they are, it doesn't matter where they came from. Anybody who's trying to look after 3 teams of developers and wears a product title, not so good, right? So, but again, my opinion here matters less than you as the product leader having a good theory and a good explanation for how many folks you need and what kind they're going to be, so you can lobby the rest of the team and get the work you need, get the folks you need. Second thing, you need to set up an organizational structure. I'll put up some org charts in a sec, one I like, a couple I don't like, for how we match our product folks against something. Against development teams, against markets, against segments, against sales groups. You know, we have to have, again, some set of theories for how we line people up. As a former software developer and a guy who believes that software will, in fact, eat everything in the world, I'm usually starting by trying to match my engineering teams up or my development teams against product managers. But there might be a lot of theories here, so handy to have one, right? And then the third thing is, you've got to have a hiring strategy. I can't tell you how many times people have been driven to tears and resignations because HR decided what the job descriptions were, HR decided how many people you need and how we're going to do recruiting, and had no clue what it is that we as product folks do, right? Often if you read those job descriptions, you'll notice that in paragraph 1 it says product, in paragraph 2 it says project, in paragraph 3 it says program, and right, so it's clearly written by somebody who hasn't done the thing and doesn't really know what the bullets are but copied it from someplace. That means you're going to get a whole set of applicants who also don't really know what they're doing. More importantly, I think, I see a lot of bad behaviors here where we decide that our company's product is so complicated and interesting and special that nobody could possibly understand it unless they had a master's or PhD on the technical side for the thing we do, right? We're doing 5-factor authentication, and if you don't have a PhD in 5-factor authentication, we can't hire you. So rather than hiring somebody who actually knows what product management is and may have done it for a while, we go hire a subject expert, right? Second choice, we don't know what product folks do, so let's hire a bunch of folks, throw them in the water, see if they swim, don't give them much counseling, good luck with that. So whatever your hiring strategy is, you need one, because otherwise your organization's going to push you in some very odd ways to fill out your team with folks who may not be the right mix. Maybe you need a couple of senior folks to coach your junior folks. Let's see. Good. All right. And then finally, because inevitably we're going to have folks on the team who haven't been product managers before, or haven't been product managers before where they could succeed and learn how to do it. As the product leader, I think it's my responsibility to make time every single week to sit with particularly the junior folks on my team, walk them through the thinking, help them through their problems. My goal here is to delegate more and more and more over time, but not to let them drown and not to let them get lost. So what's my plan, or what's your plan for coaching and mentoring the folks who are going to join your team so they can succeed? Again, pick any one of these. I'm going to drill down just a little bit more into organizational structures because that's what we did in the workshop yesterday. So some first principles. This may seem obvious, but almost nobody in the world seems to get it. Building the wrong thing is 100% waste. It doesn't matter if it's beautiful, doesn't matter if it's well engineered, doesn't matter if it's bug-free and it's well documented, lives in the cloud, ultimately scalable. If our customers don't use it, if nobody pays for it, then it was 100% waste. And folks like to assign that problem to engineering. I don't buy that for a minute. If we built the wrong thing, it's a product issue, right? Second thing down for me is when I talk with both product and engineering teams, the number one frustration they have is they never get to finish anything, because there's always a handful of executives who come down to the product and engineering area, no more than, say, once every 2 hours, with a really important thing that can't wait, that's got to be done, that wasn't in our plan last week, that wasn't in our quarterly objectives, has no OKRs behind it, whatever, but it's really important. And so as the product leader, I have to know that the number one thing I have to be is the umbrella for my team, the heat shield for my team, to keep them working on something so they can finish a thing, right? And then the last principle for me, I believe that proxies is a 4-letter word, and we'll draw that out in a second. Anytime my product managers are not speaking directly with the folks who buy and use our stuff, notice I didn't say sales, I didn't say channels, I didn't say marketing. I believe my folks have to spend time talking directly with, interviewing directly with, watching our users and buyers do their stuff, or we lose the right to write whatever requirements or tickets we're going to write to our engineering team because maybe they're the wrong thing. Okay, so let's put this into action a little bit, draw a couple of org charts just for fun. So we'll do a product structure that I like, just to put a happy tone on the first part of this, right? So I'm going to start on your left, I think. Everybody who's read any of the Agile literature for the last 20 years knows that you really want a stable team, a whole team that's dedicated to the thing you're doing. Ideally, we put a team against a set of product value, not just the front end, not just the back end, not some random bit of database or something, but some fraction of your product set where real people at the far end use it, get value out of it, because otherwise we're going to find the team doesn't really care what it's doing too much and it doesn't matter. Then I'm going to take a product manager and put that person co-located with my development team. That's really handy because it's hard to do this at a distance. And then we're going to have a lot of very frequent, in-depth conversations between the product team and the folks who buy and use our stuff. And I've inserted the words non-sales here. Everybody in product management sometimes is on a sales call. What's important to remember is that there's really only one goal of a sales call. Close, right? Coffee's for closers. So when you're in a sales call, you probably shouldn't be asking lots of open-ended questions and finding out what they hate about your product and did they buy the competition and where are we. The sales team's going to not invite you after that and soon after you're working for another company, right? So we need to have lots of discussions, lots of learning with the folks who use our stuff outside the sales cycle. Seems obvious. Okay, but let's scale this up a little bit. So let's another few teams. Again, I'm going to try to slice this horizontally. I call this end-to-end product management because the same individual person owns listening to customers and identifying problems and helping the team figure out how we're going to solve them. Right? We're going to reduce the number of handoffs. We're going to reduce the number of drop things here because the same people are going to be involved. By the way, that includes our designers and our developers who should be on a lot of those calls. Okay, so, but we're talking about product leadership, so let's draw in a little bit of product leadership. So product line director, whatever that title is, every company is going to give a different thing. Helpful hint, by the way, if you're joining a startup, the difference between an individual contributor who's the only product person at that startup and the director of product, who's the only product person at the startup, is 5 times as many options. So don't let that get away from you. Good. Okay, anyway, we've got some reporting structure here. So let's change this up a little bit. Let's look at a structure I don't like so much. Here what we've done is the classic division of, on your left side is my development team, your development team, and folks with various titles who never get out of the building, who are told that they have to be available to their teams 24/7, which means they never get to visit anybody, right? Product manager, product owner, whatever, somebody from the team. And on the other side, we've got folks who don't really spend much time understanding what it takes to build things and what the trade-offs and costs are. And again, we're going to call them whatever we like, marketing managers, product managers, something. And notice there's this really big gap between the folks who talk to users and the folks who understand how to actually solve problems and how hard they're going to be. Pretty difficult. I think a lot of folks are in this particular organizational model, but it leads to lots of frustration on both sides because we've got folks on this side who just want it done and don't understand why we can't finish everything and can't engineering be a little more productive. Let's move along here. It's got to be easy. And the folks on the other side who have no decision-making authority and very little context. Okay, so I would glue these back together again, have a single person who covers both edges, and get more done. Okay, so that was the easy one, right? Requirements are going to flow here. Notice we've stopped flowing jobs to be done or problem descriptions when we're in this situation. We've got people writing out Post-it notes for what they hope folks need. Often wrong, back to building the wrong thing is 100% waste. Okay? So I'm less excited when I see requirements flowing than good discussion between the team and the users. All right? You know there's something worse coming, right? Talked to a couple of folks outside this morning who are in this thing. Anybody in this chart? Before I fill anything else in the chart, I'm going to tell you that good people work in this organizational model, and many or most of them fail because we've set it up wrong. I know this because the business sees just what they need and what they want, and they have a really long list of stuff which isn't very well ordered or understood. And I know that the organization called IT is a cost center. So in companies that build software for a living, where if we build software that nobody buys, we all lose our jobs and go home and have to work somewhere else, we don't have an IT organization. We have an organization called engineering. And engineering is a place where we want to hire the best and brightest and smartest designers and developers and DevOps folks and everybody else, because if we build a better product, we make more money and we get to keep our jobs. IT is a cost center, and the CIO or CFO who runs this is trying to minimize our spend. Let's find cheaper developers. If we can't find cheaper developers, let's send them overseas where we can get them even cheaper. This is a good way to reduce costs, but it's a pretty lousy way to get anything useful built. Okay, so, but let's fill in the box just for fun. This might look familiar to some of you on the business side. Lots of people fighting, right? Lots of priorities. Some business unit executive is going to make a choice at the end of the month or quarter that has nothing to do with the value of any of these, but picked a few things off a bullet list and said, go do them, right? Too much work, right? We're in some other business. We're in the transportation business. We don't actually care about the software. And on the other side, we've got a bunch of folks. Often it's resource pools, which means nobody's committed and everybody hates their job, right? We've got some various assorted titles: product owner, technical product manager, BA, don't care. None of those people get to make good decisions because everything's been decided before they were assigned, right? The CIO, who is short-lived, don't take that job. And then what flows across is two things. One is technical requirements. People on the one side who really are sure what they want, write in great detail and mostly get it wrong. And the second thing is delivery dates. And this miraculous thing happens, which is it's impossible to deliver all these things by the dates promised because the folks on the business side are pretty poorly informed about what it takes and the trade-offs are not obvious. I do this at great length because I see good people in every one of these boxes, and I see many of them failing. And I don't criticize them individually, I criticize the structure. All right, so which is why it's so important to me personally that folks who step up into the product leader job think about how their folks are going to succeed, think about the organizational issues, think about how we're going to measure and reward folks so we don't end up in a situation where IT always fails and everybody thinks badly of it and turnover is tremendous. Okay, let's go. We got a couple more things here. Driving strategy, tooling outcomes, this I think is obvious until we unpack it. As the product leader, I believe, and I think all of you as product leaders are responsible for championing long-term customer value. That means, for instance, we don't jam some new price feature in so we can extract a lot of money this quarter that all our customers are going to hate and drive up churn next quarter because our goal was to make money, right? I see a lot of executive teams spend months and months deciding whether they want to use OKRs and 3 minutes or less choosing what those OKRs are, and they're almost always a mess, right? We need goals that make sense when they need to be aligned. Okay, let's keep going. Collaboration, nobody does these trust falls anymore, I hope, because legal will have stopped you, but we know we need to have a lot of good collaboration and cooperation with all the other groups that we work with because we can't just tell them what to do. So figuring out who's on teams and task forces is a product leader job to get it right. A lot of work for me or the other product leaders to build trust and understanding with the other functions. Again, I love Claire's talk from earlier before. Outcome focus, nobody actually cares that we ship that feature on time. It would be helpful if that feature generated money or improved customer satisfaction or reduced numbers of support tickets, but nobody cares about the rest of it, right? So how do we have outcome focus here? Shared context. Let's keep going. I don't know why I put a dog in here, but I did. Actually, that's not true. If you've ever house-trained a puppy, you know a lot about working with executives. Okay, so what are the things we got to do, right? We need to push for business coherence. If marketing and sales are fighting because marketing delivers lots of leads, which sales says are worthless, because they always do, we got to figure out how to get our teammates, our C-level suite folks to work together, right? We have a continuous focus on customer value before revenue, because otherwise we're out of business. And then I see product leaders spending a tremendous amount of time coaching their peers on how to get along. This would seem obvious again, but nobody does it. If support and engineering are fighting, then I better step in and figure it out, get these folks talking, take them out for a drink, whatever it is, right? Good. So having laid out what I think product leaders do, the next obvious question is, should I want that? I don't know if you should want that, right? Your call. Things that are good about stepping up from the individual contributor to the product leader job, right? More scope, more money, more visibility. You get to sit with the other kids at the big kids table, right? And you're going to spend a lot more time on the sort of mentoring organizational design. If you like that, that's good. Negatives. You're going to do a lot less and soon no product management work per se. If you really love it, think hard, right? And if we think of those things I described as politics and you hate it, this might not be the best choice, right? What I see finally in product management is the evolution of these sort of senior or distinguished product managers who don't get pushed into the leadership role necessarily, the same way we have distinguished engineers who don't give up all the good stuff they were doing to get pushed into management and hate their jobs. Okay, two quick things in the 30 seconds I have left. Signaling interest. If you're one of these individual contributors and you think you want to move up to that next job, most important thing is that you go to your immediate manager and have a frank discussion. They're going to find out anyway, right? And think you're gunning for their job. Not so good. I'm really impressed. I'd love to do what you do. Can you give me some advice, feedback? The other part of this is, what do I ask those folks to do? Volunteer for the things that product leaders do, So we can see that you've got that talent, and that'll pull you up. Okay, last bit here. Anybody have this sign? Maybe not. Okay. If you're trying to change companies and move up in the stack, that's a little harder. Things you're going to have to do. Do a lot of networking with product leaders and other product managers at other companies. Find out what's going on, make friends, build a network. You're going to need it anyway. And I would not rely on the online application world, because it's much less efficient than going to meet people and finding out what's really going on. Okay, let's just click through this. So here's my takeaways. Think hard about what you want and why you want it, because if it's not what you want, don't apply for it, right? Product leaders focus on product teams and portfolios, not products. Again, you're going to give something up to get something back. We're going to champion long-term value. And then, again, here's my takeaway. As a product leader, my job is to create the conditions so that my folks can succeed, rather than look over their shoulders and do their work for them. Good. That's what I've got. This is How to Find Me. And yes, that's the book from 2008, which may be one of the very first product management books, and maybe not. Good. I think we're done here. Thanks so much.